Hello, you are on Ruslan Belov's channel, and this is another daily combat situation report from the Ukrainian front. As of today, a number of changes have been recorded on the map, and they are indeed of great importance. It is precisely these developments that we will discuss in detail and analyze within this video. In addition, the situation surrounding the strike involving the Oreshnik system is gradually becoming clearer. Information is coming in that Oreshnik was used not only against a gas storage facility, but also against a military airfield that was receiving military cargo. According to available data, the airfield's infrastructure has been almost completely destroyed. However, it should be noted that the information is still being utочняется. Data is coming in, including from pro-Ukrainian sources. It is also reported that part of Kiev has been left without electricity and water supply. In some districts of the capital, it is already possible to speak of a blackout, albeit a partial one, but a significant number of residents have already felt these consequences firsthand. Meanwhile, extremely positive news is coming from the front line, so let us move directly to a detailed review of the operational situation. So friends, let me remind you, in the previous report we thoroughly analyzed two major breakthroughs, which resulted in the Russian army advancing across an area of about 30 square kilometers in just one day. At the time, I noted that these were the best advance indicators for the entire current year. However, the past 24 hours not only repeated that result, but surpassed it, setting a new record. The reason is a complete and systemic collapse of the armed forces of Ukraine's defenses on the Konstantinovka axis. And this is not a matter of loud wording, but a real confirmed failure. It is enough to look at the map. On the northern flank, there is a serious breakdown. Inside the city, the defensive line has been breached, and in the southern sector, Russian units are also confidently advancing. However, let us begin the analysis in order, and not with Konstantinovka itself, but with the sector to the north, namely the Kramatorsk direction. Here, Russian units managed to fully press and secure the settlement of Novomarkovo, which has now come under complete control. Taking into account the current configuration of the front line, serious pressure has begun on Markovo. Ukrainian formations are still holding their positions for now, but the prospects for their defense look extremely doubtful, since in the future the village risks being enveloped from three directions at once. From the north, east, and south. In the area of Oricov-Vasilyevka, fighting continues. At the same time, Russian forces managed to advance through the forested area along the settlement and reach the approaches to Minkovka. The objectives here remain the same and have already been discussed previously. The goal is to capture a fortified AFU defensive area consisting of three villages, Minkovka, Golubovka, and Privolye. After that, a complete clearing of this sector is planned, followed by further movement toward Alexandrovka. Now let us move to the situation involving the collapse of AFU defenses directly in the Konstantinovka area, starting with the sector north of the city. It is noted that Russian fighters, advancing from the southern outskirts of Chasov Yar, took advantage of adverse weather conditions, under which enemy drone operators cannot fully perform their functions, and managed to break through into the suburban village of Novodmitrovka. Moreover, this was not just a raid. The units entered the settlement, entrenched themselves, and occupied nearly half of its territory. The breakthrough distance amounted to almost 7 kilometers, 6.8 kilometers to be precise. What prospects does this open up? The key factor now is holding the captured positions. To do so, it is necessary in the shortest possible time to push AFU units out to the north, from Nikolaevka, Podolskoye, and Chervonoye. In that case, the base of the breakthrough will become wider and more stable. In parallel, it is necessary to fully press and secure Novodmitrovka and, using it as a foothold, begin advancing into the private housing sector in the northern parts of the city. In any case, the very fact of such a breakthrough looks extremely serious and clearly demonstrates the acute shortage of infantry within the AFU. If they had sufficient infantry reserves, breakthroughs of nearly 7 kilometers would simply not be possible. At the same time, Russian units are gradually expanding their zone of control within Konstantinovka itself. They managed to complete the clearing of Tramvaynaya Street and take it under full control. In addition, advances were made along 7 more streets, reaching Sobornosti Street. Moreover, Russian units were able to cross Sobornosti Street itself and push deeper into the urban area. South of the city, a pocket between the railway lines was cleared. If we move even further down the map, we can note the beginning of the clearing of the northern shore of the Kleban-Beek Reservoir. However, the most impressive events occurred in the southern direction. Here, a breakthrough of about 7 kilometers was also carried out, and in my view, it is even more significant than the northern one. I will explain why. First, on this sector, the AFU had built an extremely dense, monolithic defensive line that Russian forces had unsuccessfully attempted to breach for nearly half a year. Second, during the breakthrough, Russian units managed to simultaneously enter 2 settlements at once and establish a foothold in both. We are talking about the village of Berestokh, where the industrial zone was captured, and the village of Ilinovka, where 2 streets, Naberezhnaya and Molodezhnaya, came under control. Third, this success creates real prerequisites for breaking through AFU defenses in the areas of Stepanovka and Dolgaya Balka, key settlements located on elevated terrain and heavily fortified. As for the near-term prospects, if Russian forces manage to fully press and secure Berestokh, this will open the way to the complete clearing of the entire northern shore of the Kleban-Beek Reservoir. And if success is further developed in Ilinovka, pressure will begin on the high-rise residential districts of Konstantinovka. If we look at the situation as a whole, it becomes obvious that thanks to these 2 breakthroughs, the Russian army has begun to form a full-scale envelopment, effectively squeezing the city in a pincer movement. If previously we were talking about only a partial envelopment, now events are clearly being accelerated. Pressure is intensifying both on the flanks and directly inside the city. It is difficult to predict exact timelines. The sector is heavy, but it is obvious that after such a collapse, the chances of the AFU holding Konstantinovka over the next 6 months have been significantly reduced. On the contrary, there is now a real possibility that the city could come under Russian control as early as June. At the same time, progress over the past 24 hours was recorded not only on the Konstantinovka axis, but also on the Oricov axis. In fact, the former Gulyai-Pol sector is increasingly transforming into the Oricov sector, since the main vector of Russian troop movement is an approach to Oricov from the east. Here, the Haichur River was crossed, the village of Zelenoye was taken under control, after which there was an advance of 2 kilometers towards Sviatopetrovka, with Russian units entering its eastern outskirts. Those who regularly watch my reports will remember that 2 or 3 days ago I already mentioned that offensive actions had begun in this area. And here is the first confirmation with a map update. Moreover, the real situation for the AFU here is even worse than what is visually reflected, as Russian units are already present on the outskirts of Starukranka. As for Sviatopetrovka, given that the village is blocked from the north, east and south, Ukrainian forces will not be able to hold it, and in the near future, the settlement will come under Russian control. The key element of AFU defense in this sector remains Zaliznychnoye, a powerful fortified node. Its collapse will lead to a rollback of the front line all the way to the Gulyai-Pol area, after which Oricov will already be in direct perspective. Let me remind you of my forecast. By the beginning of May, Oricov may come under Russian control. Additionally, it is worth noting that south of Gulyai-Pol, Russian units have closed a large pocket with an area of approximately 11 square kilometers. At the same time, pressure on AFU defenses continues in the area of the settlement of Primorskoye. Reports are coming in about the clearing of a pocket between Primorskoye and Lukyanovskoye, as well as the expansion of the control zone to the north of Stepnogorsk. As of the time of recording this video, there is no confirming visual material yet. The information is coming exclusively in the form of reports, so I mention it with appropriate reservations. FPV drone attacks by the AFU have also been recorded against Russian positions in the areas of Stepovoye, Malye-Shcherbaki, Sherbaki, Lukyanovskoye, Stepnogorsk and Plavny. At the same time, no strikes were carried out on Primorskoye, which allows us to assume that the settlement is largely located within a grey zone. Despite the news coming from there are no confirmed changes to the line of control at this time. Next, let us move to the Oricov area. From here, reports are also coming in about attempts by Russian units to press AFU defenses in the area of Novodanilovka and in the direction of Malaya Tokmachka. Let me remind you that these settlements were previously already under Russian control, after which the AFU launched counterattacks and Russian forces were forced to withdraw slightly. Now the situation is developing in the opposite direction. Pressure is being applied to the enemy's defensive positions, and it is possible that as of the time of recording, there has already been an expansion of the control zone. As soon as confirmed data appears, I will definitely show the changes on the map and explain everything in detail. Moving further on, from the Dnipropetrovsk direction, reports are coming in that after the capture of the settlements of Bratskoye, Gerasimovka, and Zareknoye, Russian forces have significantly expanded their zone of control to the west of these locations and are applying pressure on Novoye Pole, Boykovka, and Ternovatoye. We already talked about this earlier, but today new data is coming in, indicating that the combat contact area west of these settlements has already come under Russian control. As soon as this information is fully confirmed, the corresponding changes will be applied to the map. Already now, it can be assumed that active assault actions in the areas of Ternovatoye and Novoye Pole will begin within the next week. Now let us move to the Seversk direction. As of the time of recording this video, there are no recorded changes on this sector of the front. Nevertheless, information is coming in that Russian forces continue to deliver fire strikes against AFU positions in the area of the settlement of Nikiforovka. In addition, Russian sources report a significant expansion of the control zone west of the settlement of Reznikovka. Reznikovka is located here. It is elongated along the terrain, and this entire area belongs to the settlement. In addition, north of Reznikovka and Sviatopetrovka, there are dominant heights. It is precisely these heights that pro-Russian sources are now reporting as allegedly having already fully come under Russian control. However, I would like to remind you of an important point. If these heights are indeed taken under full control, then Reznikovka itself, which is located in a lowland area, will become vulnerable and could be captured in a very short period of time. That is precisely why there is a possibility that the incoming information is somewhat premature, and that not all of the heights are currently actually under the control of Russian units. In addition, Russian forces continue to apply pressure in the direction of the settlement of Zakotnoye, or more precisely, they are continuing the clearing operations within this settlement. At the moment, only news reports are coming in, without any visual confirmation. As soon as confirming materials appear regarding an expansion of the control zone, I will definitely inform you and show the changes on the map. As of today, this is how the situation looks on this sector. Let us move further along the map. From the Krasny-Liman direction, confirmed video materials have been received, indicating that Russian units have entered the direction of the settlement of Alexandrovka, or more precisely, directly into the settlement itself. The video footage was received from this specific point, showing the forward positions of Russian troops. Earlier, the map had already been updated. This section of forested terrain literally came under the control of Russian units within just a few days. At the moment, I am displaying the map in this exact configuration. However, pro-Russian sources are marking this area differently, from the side of the settlement of Srednye. In Russian cartographic sources, the control zone is shown as expanding from Srednye. Nevertheless, I proceed from the assumption that Russian forces most likely entered Alexandrovka from the forested areas rather than directly from Srednye. As soon as the situation is fully clarified, I will certainly make the necessary adjustments and update the map. At the same time, it can already be stated that Russian units are present on the eastern outskirts of Alexandrovka. It cannot be ruled out that, as of the time of recording this video, assault operations are already underway inside the settlement, and that the actual zone of control is significantly wider than what is currently reflected on the map. An expansion of the Russian forces' control zone is also being noted in the area of the settlement of Sviatogorsk. Earlier, video footage had already been received from this point, where Russian units were seen wedging themselves between Tatyankovka and Sviatogorsk. Now, reports are emerging about a further expansion of the control zone in this area. However, at the moment, there is no confirming material, so no changes are shown on the map here today. The changes marked in red that you can see relate to yesterday's situation. As of today, these are the updates for this direction. Summing up the overall results, the following can be stated. Over the past 24 hours, the Russian army has taken control of 2 settlements and approximately 58 square kilometers of territory. At present, this is a record figure for the year 2026. To put this into perspective, nearly 90 square kilometers have been taken in just 2 days. The result is truly impressive. As they say, this is only the beginning, and 2026 still has much more to show. That concludes my overview of the operational situation on the front. Now let us briefly turn to the political agenda. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that in response to Kiev's attack on the residence of Vladimir Putin, Russian forces carried out a massive strike against critically important Ukrainian facilities, including the use of the Oreshnik system. It was reported that facilities involved in the production of unmanned aerial vehicles used in the terrorist attack were hit, as well as elements of the energy infrastructure that ensure the functioning of Ukraine's military-industrial complex. The target of the Oreshnik strike in the Lviv area was Ukraine's largest gas storage facility, located in the Bilchevolitsko-Uherska district of the Lviv region. It was there that more than half of all Ukraine's gas reserves had been concentrated in preparation for the winter period. This was not a symbolic target. The destruction of a facility of this scale represents a serious blow to Ukraine's energy sector and overall economy. According to statements by the West Air Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the ballistic missile that struck the Lviv region was traveling at a speed of approximately 13,000 kilometers per hour. The strike on Lviv using the Oreshnik system was described in the Verkhovna Rada as a direct warning to Europe, which is considering the possibility of deploying military contingents to western Ukraine. One of the deputies stated that if such a system can reach Lviv in 10 to 15 minutes, then it would take only a few minutes more to reach Warsaw or Berlin, and that difference is no longer of fundamental importance. The second area targeted by the strikes was the territory of Kyiv. According to reports, missiles and Geran drones were used during the attack. In total, around 40 Kard-101 and Caliber cruise missiles, 13 Iskander missiles, and more than 200 unmanned aerial vehicles were employed. Once again, strikes were carried out against Kyiv's thermal power plants, CHP-4, CHP-5, and CHP-6, as well as the Trypilska thermal power plant near Kyiv. Numerous strikes were recorded against electrical substations, including those supplying power linked to the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants. Strikes were also carried out against Ukrainian military-industrial complex facilities and against the Giuliani airfield. According to Russian military bloggers, the target may have been another Patriot air defense system. In total, 19 locations were hit in the Kyiv area. The capital found itself in an effectively catastrophic situation: a partial blackout, damage to railway infrastructure, and disruptions to transport operations. After the nighttime attack, at least 500,000 subscribers in Kyiv were left without electricity. Strikes were also recorded against district boiler houses, undermining the operation of the heating supply system, as reported by Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Yulia Sviridenko. As a result of the strikes, depots and other railway infrastructure facilities were damaged, Deputy Prime Minister Oleksandr Kubrakov stated. Due to icing of the overhead contact network, 42 trains across Ukraine are delayed, including 18 long-distance trains and 24 suburban trains. In the Kyiv metro, intervals between trains have been increased to 20 to 25 minutes, and the city administration has urged residents to use the metro only in cases of extreme necessity. On the section between the Zaporizhzhia and Arsenalna stations, only one train is operating, which passes without stopping at the Hydropark and Dnipro stations. In addition, the building of the Verkhovna Rada was left without water supply and heating after the nighttime attack, according to Deputy Danilo Hetmantsev.